This country belongs to all of us. We made this country from nothing. This was a mud flat, swamp. Today, this is a modern city. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis. Never fear.
Every time I hear that quote, it just makes me, quite emotional because it set the vision for the country. He basically drew a very clear red line and said, this is what we want to achieve. And immediately everyone aligned and made sure that this was something we were all working towards.
He was very determined to make sure that the Singapore economy will always be competitive. Because his point is that if we are not competitive, then we are not able to create growth, there will be no resources, then all of us will be poor together in Singapore.
Top priority is being given to improve the living conditions of the slum and kampong dwellers who were neglected by previous administrations.
The end objective of the government of a country is to ensure that all Singaporeans can live a better life, can enjoy a higher standard of living. So to him, having a competitive economy and a cohesive society, the two go hand in hand.
How are you going to turn the place of Mudflats into a nation? How do you enrich the lives of people in Singapore? It's imperative that Singapore builds up its infrastructure. Back then, the Singapore Telephone Board built basic communication services for Singapore. It's important not only for Singapore to be connected from within, from businesses to businesses, from people to people, but also for Singapore to be connected to the rest of the world.
You wanted connectivity on two different media, submarine cable as well as satellite comms. But of course, a big challenge for Singapore is, do you send a satellite up there to serve our very small market? But to serve the needs of the enterprises, of course, we eventually did. It was also to serve broadcasting needs. TV was still very much consumed during that time.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Singaporeans were able to watch the first moon landing in 1969.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This was a psychological Rubicon that was crossed, right, just by that simple connection to that moon landing, and it made Singaporeans feel that you're part of a much larger planet and you are connected to the world. And I think that was very important.
First, to leapfrog the region and link up with the developed world for both capital and market initiatives.
What we had to do was to create a condition so that even though we don't have the market, even though we don't have the resources, the technological know-how, we must be able to attract the players of the world, North America, Europe, Japan.
But of course, these MNCs were not just interested in the Singapore market. We are too small. They were seeing Singapore as a springboard into the region. In order to support that, we had to build infrastructure of two levels. One connecting the international business hubs, say London, Europe, and America to Singapore.
Singapore is recognized as a major financial center.
5459.
Foreign exchange dealers are in contact with the money capitals of the world.
And then from Singapore into the region, the Southeast Asia region, the East Asia region.
The pipes that we provide for submarine cables and satellite were the newest technology back then. But we adopted it and we made Singapore into a connection hub in this part of the world.
We were leaders in submarine cable build-up. Some of the largest submarine cable systems connecting Europe to Singapore, Singapore onwards to Japan and onwards to the USA. These cable systems still serve very much the world today.
like what Mr. Lee have always said, make sure that we are always competitive. We invested so that we became the aviation hub, we became a maritime center, and at the same time, making sure that we are linked up to the rest of the world through telecommunication.
The telephone girls at the International Exchange are the link between delegates and their offices and families thousands of miles away.
Once you build up international connectivity, you have to continue to build up infrastructure for the country, HDB flats, to provide connectivity to every household becomes a priority. We were able to move very quickly and convert the whole nation from the rotary dial phones into the digital push-button telephones for everyone in Singapore. That's something that we are very proud of.
By the mid-70s to late 70s, we reached full employment. So we were so successful in our growth and our job creation, and that created a second challenge. And that was something that Mr. Lee was most preoccupied with. Basically, he asked this question: having reached full employment, how can we create further growth? Is it just about getting our workers to work harder, to work longer hours? I think the answer is obviously no. That's not sustainable. So he looked to technology as a way forward.
To stand still is to court ruin. So we must move forward and upward. We must climb up the education ladder, up towards better technology, towards higher skills, towards better management, towards higher productivity.
Singapore is entering a new and exciting post-industrial era, the age of information.
As a result, the Committee on National Computerization was formed, and we embarked on a journey on national computerization.
All of Singapore's government services were computerized. And it's not done through one cycle, it went through multiple cycles of technology refresh. And the way technology is applied in Singapore is very citizen-centric. You can think of it almost from cradle to grave. From birth to schools, to national service, to our tax systems, healthcare, transportation, all the way to the registration of death for a citizen. Through this, we've also achieved a number of world's firsts, such as the world's first e-filing tax system and the first electronic road pricing system.
The idea is that can we not make better use of computer technology so that we can enhance our productivity as a national economy, as a society?
One day, if all goes well, this computer will allow the trading community to speed up the processing procedure for all import, export, and transshipment documents to a fraction of their present time.
When we first started, it took days and weeks for all this documentation to be done. And then over the years with productivity and with reorganization, we cut down to about 2 days. But we still feel that it was not good enough. We were able to reduce the trade documentation from 2 days to just 15 minutes. So there's a kind of not just productivity, not just time saving, but more importantly, it strengthened our competitiveness as an economy. TradeNet, in a way, was the forerunner and enabled Singapore to open a new frontier, to look at the computerization in completely different lights.
What makes the information age different is the combination of information with computer and communications technology. Through this technology, information becomes a powerful tool.
Can we nurture computer technology as an export-oriented industry to help us to grow our economy further, to generate more resources?
The focus was around creation of jobs and being very efficient and effective. To a large degree, we've achieved that with technology. If we are a technology hub, the impact we are making will not just be confined to Singapore. Our impact can be seen and felt in the region and around the world.
Software technology is vital to the future development of an information-based economy. But there's a need to develop our own software industry and to train up some 6,000 to 8,000 computer professionals by 1990.
At the point in time, we were behind many countries in the world, and our strategy was not just to catch up with the rest of the world. Because once you catch up with the rest of the world, you're just moving from negative to neutral. Our mindset at the point in time was, can we leapfrog and surge ahead? And we thought it could be done. because computer technology was moving so fast from 1980 to 1990, these 10 years, we came a long way. But just when we thought we have computer and communication within our control, guess what? Somewhere in Silicon Valley, we were told that there's this new invention called Internet.
SingNet, Singapore Telecom's link to a major international computer network, is to be introduced next month.
Many of us who used internet at that time were so happy when you can hear that, okay, that means you're connected, right? And that rode on the copper wire that connected the home to the exchange. So it was a technology that sat on the existing last mile, the copper wire that was already laid for telephony. Now we put data on top, and that's the internet.
We realized that that is not going to be sufficient because the internet is going to explode. Everyone needed faster speed, higher bandwidth.
We decided that it's time to update our national IT plan to what we call the IT 2000 to look ahead the next 10 years.
A committee is being formed to guide Singapore into the age of information technology. The new National Information Technology Committee aims to help Singapore become an intelligent island with a nationwide IT network by the year 2000.
Singapore took the vision of enabling the nation to move into the fiber age. The government took a very brave move, funded the build-up of OpenNet, which is fibering up every home.
It took us 6 years to complete the rollout, and that connections has proven to be the best investment for the country.
That, I would say, laid the foundation for Singapore from the early 2000s all the way to today. It's future-proofing our homes.
Without fiber to every home, I can't imagine how we would have survived that 2 years of COVID, where everyone needed that high bandwidth to work from home, to study from home. The early investment of providing fiber has saved us from a lot of pain during that crisis.
This sets the foundation for the early adoption of digitalization, which is why we can swiftly adopt mobile applications, data analytics, the movement to the cloud, and now artificial intelligence.
Stepping up the pace of competition in the telecommunications industry, one new mobile data operator was given the go-ahead today, and the government intends to license 4 more soon.
Back in the 90s, when the telecommunications industry was liberalized, when Singtel was no longer a monopoly, the only way to grow the business is to go out of Singapore.
The international economic situation is very difficult. Perhaps by way of compensation, the regional situation is favorable. East Asia and ASEAN have emerged with the best growth record and the best promise of further growth.
This was the time when not just Singapore but the rest of ASEAN and Asia was starting to grow economically and become very relevant in the global map. And mobile technology, mobile services and communication services were just beginning in many of the ASEAN countries.
In a very similar way of how Singapore has to punch above its weight, Singtel shares that vision by going out of Singapore.
So we thought, hey, we had something that we could provide the region, right? We knew how to operate a mobile network. We knew how to market it, we know how to price it, we know how to run it efficiently and highly reliable. And we have the Singapore way of running a business. We've got good corporate governance, we've got good values, we've got great talent, and we do the right thing.
And that's how Singtel expanded into Australia, into India, Thailand, into Philippines, into Indonesia. Today, almost 70% of Singtel's profits comes from overseas.
This Singapore brand of running businesses and governance mattered a lot. It took, I think, a lot of vision. It took a lot of gumption. And I must say, it took a lot of LKY spirit.
In 1965, Mr. Lee has given us not just a vision, it's a path to a future state. He called it from Mudflats to metropolis. Today, we have to define what's next. Are we attracting more multinationals, or are we going to create multinationals out of Singapore? Or is it more about impact going forward?
For the young, let me tell you, the sky has turned brighter. There's a glorious rainbow that beckons those with the spirit of adventure, and there are rich findings at the end of that rainbow. To the young and to the not so old, I say, look at that horizon. Follow that rainbow. Go ride it.
When people set off on adventure, frankly, the adventurer doesn't quite know the path forward because he has to find a path, he has to forge a path. In other words, we are never certain of what the road is going to be like. But what you have to be confident about is that you are well equipped, you have the necessary resources to last that journey. Compared to other countries, we have invested in huge chunks for Singapore's infrastructure. So I think we're in a good position.
The demand for data centers in Singapore is extremely high. Why are companies locating their data centers in Singapore? It's because of the high quality of infrastructure, high quality of telecommunication services, from fixed voice in the 70s, 80s, into cellular communication, into mobile phones in the 90s, all the way to the 2000s. And today, we have more than 100% penetration of mobile phones in Singapore. On the cellular world, we went from a voice connection to a data connection where information can be carried wirelessly. So this move from voice connectivity to data connectivity were provided in parallel, both on the fixed line, through fiber, through the cellular, through 3G to 4G.
We were first to build 3G. We were amongst the first to launch 4G. We are, of course, very first movers into 5G. And the fact that we smoothly transitioned from 3G to 4G to where we are today in 5G shows that we sailed through that disruption in technology smoothly. Very often, laying the infrastructure is required first, but you see the fruits of such investment some years later.
There's always risk in making early investments. It has to be a calculated risk. We have to be clear that this is investing in infrastructure that will set us up for success in the future. Many would argue that there's no real need for a 5G, but the capability of the technology is beyond just providing data connection to everyone. It actually can enable and transform businesses.
Singapore has really exploited the power of computerization, communication, and content in the way we embrace technology. How did we do it? I think we had the benefit of being a country, being a city-state. So even though we are small, we are complex enough to offer a multitude of use cases for us to test different applications.
Adopting 5G standalone network, and the first in the world to provide nationwide coverage, allows Singapore to be one big test bed for the world to try out new solutions and applications, especially in the industrial application area. So we have hospitals using the 5G standalone network for its operations. We have car manufacturing companies like Hyundai who have used 5G to develop a manufacturing plant in Singapore. We have Micron, a chip manufacturing company, to use 5G to deploy a whole new process of manufacturing using 5G.
Compared to where we were in 1965, our market is no longer constrained. We have new markets to go after around us in Southeast Asia, across to Asia Pacific, and to the rest of the world. And Singapore firms are well positioned, multilingual, multicultural, and generally wanting to make an impact. We have an opportunity to be the hub for many things, as a business hub, a talent hub, as a technology hub. In a borderless world, competition will become more intense. And as Mr. Lee has said, Singapore companies must continue to be extraordinary if we are to be the regional business hub.
Well, Mr. Lee often reminded us that it's not easy to sustain economic competitiveness and social cohesion for the long term, 50 years, 100 years and beyond. In the case of the social cohesion, can we make use of the advancement of technology to ensure that this digital divide will turn into digital inclusivity? So in other words, the smart nation of the future, the smart society of the future, the smart transportation of the future, the smart job of the future will be within reach of all Singaporeans.
And it is very important to give everyone an equal opportunity. And you know what? Technology matters a lot because it is an enabler. It levels the playing field. This is the crux of what the smart nation is all about. It has to benefit every Singaporean living here. Do we have, for the young entrepreneur, the gig entrepreneur who wants to start a business, we need to think about how they can tap capital. And technology can help to actually build their business. Even for the elderly, how they can be very much part of the fabric of the country and really using technology to be very close to the pulse of the country.
This is my country, this is my flag, this is my future, this is my life, this is my family.
Fast forward to today, nothing will change. You look ahead the next 50 years, the next 100 years, we still have to make sure that Singapore will always be competitive, the society always be cohesive, that whatever we do today is not just to make sure that we can grow, survive today, but always to lay a strong foundation for the next generation and the generation after that to continue to grow and to prosper. The spirit of Mr. Lee, I think, is very dear to our heart because that spirit, that relevance will never change.